The next question, the member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Speaker, for over a year, this government has suggested that any question or criticism in this legislature regarding the government's use of lockdown restrictions was beyond reproach. It was all based on science, they said, and as instructed by the doctors. The government was powerless to do otherwise. Last Friday, we saw otherwise. The Premier and Solicitor General announced the banning of parks and playgrounds, and then less than 24 hours later, they changed their mind. Within days, Ontario's Science Advisory Table publicly stated no such advice was given. Will the government finally admit that its lockdown restrictions for the last year that have resulted in Ontario just now entering a phase of peak transmission have been decided entirely by them and not by any anonymous doctors and not based on any pseudoscience as they have claimed?
Government House Leader.
No, Mr. Speaker. The member will know because she did sit in caucus for a number of months and was privy to many of the same discussions that all members of the caucus have had, and of course members of the opposition have had in the many briefings that we have provided with them, including with Dr. Williams. And of course, the Solicitor General has attended, along with Dr. Williams and other public health officials, the Select Committee on Emergency Management with respect to COVID response, Mr. Speaker. So the member will know full well that much of what we have been doing on day in and day out, not only leading into the crisis to renew our public health care system after the 15 devastating years of Liberal government, but she will know that all of the actions that we have taken throughout this pandemic have been focused on one thing: keeping the people of the province of Ontario safe. And she will recall, of course, on those many caucuses that she also had the opportunity to discuss the data that was provided by public health officials.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker. Debating and voting on lockdown restrictions and other powers provides for better decision-making. But all of that was stripped away last year with Bill 195, the Reopening Ontario Act. Just yesterday, Global News reported, following the government's disastrous announcement banning parks and giving the police unprecedented carding powers, that a government MPP said on the record, caucus is never consulted on lockdown measures or reversals. The Premier doesn't want feedback from this legislature or his own caucus, or the doctors, or the scientists on the province's advisory table. Will the Premier finally admit that using Bill 195 to skip the legislative process on the use of lockdown restrictions in exchange for decision-making done in secret and behind closed doors was a mistake and has resulted in worse outcomes for Ontario?
Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If I recall, the member opposite voted against that measure, and I commend her for that. She voted against the measure that she's now talking about, and ultimately left the caucus as a result of that. And as I said, the member opposite had an opportunity to make a decision on the ROA bill that she talks about. And she voted against it. And I commend her for doing that. She felt that it was important for her to do that. That's, of course, unlike the member for York Centre, who voted in favour of that bill, colleagues, and a number of the other measures. We think that the measures that we have brought forward have protected the people of the province of Ontario, have really given us the opportunity to keep as many people in the province of Ontario safe, despite the challenges that we inherited from the previous Liberal government and despite the failings of the federal government when it comes to vaccines and border issues. Thank you.